Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
Well, Justin, let's get started with a warm-up, okay? You ready?
I'm ready.
Good. Okay. So, we're just kind of a little bit on topic, or at least adjacent topic, for our discussion today. I want you to think of the coolest underwater fight you can think of and present it on a delectable canvas for us.
You got it. It's funny you said underwater fight because I was reading the prompt and I in my mind I thought like a water fight that you'd have during the summer with your friends, and I was like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Okay, but this is totally different. So let me, yeah. You and your companions find the well where the boy had presumably gone missing. He's been gone for a few days, and this was his last sighting. And all accounts that you've heard point to the fact that he's probably dead at the bottom of the well. So there's only one thing to do. You lower yourselves down into the well, and it's surprisingly large. You know, you all seem to fit, and as you submerge yourselves to start looking for the body, you feel a current, and the current pulls you. And before you know it, you find yourself pulled into a riptide and thrust into this deep ravine. This well goes a lot deeper than you thought because it actually shunts you into this large open space, this large ocean space. And in fact, the well's nowhere near you. And in fact, you don't feel like you're even on this plane anymore. All you see is water around you. Quick as a flash, your cleric casts water breathing on everyone. I don't know if clerics can actually do that, but that's what I'm imagining. Casts water breathing on everyone, and so you don't need to worry about that. But now that you mention it, the rogue seems to be missing, which for rogues is not a strange thing. And now the barbarians... Oh, this is not good. You finally take a chance to look for what's going on, and it seems that large tentacles are coming out of this ravine and pulling members of your party hither and thither. And naturally, you go into investigation mode and defense mode, and you investigate to see what's at the end of this long tentacle, these long tentacles. And instead of a kraken or an octopus, you see a giant head of a human. Lots of tentacles, and it's grasping, and at this point, you're in full fight mode. It's this giant human head at the bottom, or with tentacles that come from right underneath it. And the head is bald, and it's male, and it has it has a very strong jaw, and it kind of has a smolder, and you recognize that this is the Rock. You are fighting the Rocktopus. What do you think?
Well, I have to say, I was like, oh, I love the setting. I love it. And then when you got to the end, I was like, okay, a giant head that's got a smoldering look. So he brought a handsome head to a water fight. That's fun. And then you called it the octopus. And I was like, okay, he wins. Fine.
I had to do that because I printed on my 3D printer like a little. With 3D printing, there are certain models that you can make that are one print, but they're actually articulating. And I printed this octopus that had the head of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and I was like, that has to be able to fit into an underwater fight somewhere,
And you did it. You absolutely did it. So proud of you. You've come so far.
Thank you. This is the best we can do at 9:00 on a Wednesday night, so I'm proud of myself.
I am too. I'm very proud of you. Well, with that being said, I'd like to welcome everybody to the podcast. This is How to Be a Better DM. And today we're going to be discussing how the Dungeon Master's Guide can help you provide a better story, a better adventure for you and your players. But first off, let's go into a little bit of the announcements. So we have a one-shot coming up this Saturday. We had to postpone a lot. I was sick the past few weeks, so that kind of threw a wrench into everything. But yeah, so for you who signed up for that, I really appreciate your patience and all the moving around that we had to do. I'm feeling better. Just a light cough here and there. But not bad at all. Yeah, otherwise doing well. It was my birthday yesterday, so that was fun, obviously.
Yeah, so if you guys get a chance, reach out and tell Tanner happy birthday.
Oh, no, please. I didn't bring that up. Oh, Justin, no, just kidding.
No, we got to sing happy birthday. Well, we won't sing it here because I'm not a very good singer, but you in podcast land, while you're doing whatever you're doing, just go ahead and sing Tanner happy birthday.
And I'll hear it. I will find a way. Just kidding. Just kidding. But honestly, yeah, very excited that I'm feeling better and I get to do the one shot. Super excited. Yeah. Otherwise, Justin, do you have any other announcements that we need to talk about?
Yeah. One announcement. We are always looking to improve the show, and the quickest way to do that is by you, the listener, telling us what is good and what is not very good. So if you get an opportunity, direct message us on Instagram at howtobeabetterdm or send an email to howtobeabetterdm@gmail.com and just let us know your thoughts, specifically things that you would change or improve, and even things that you like. And that's really just going to, help us hopefully give you more so that way you can have better Dungeon Master sessions, better D&D sessions, and it's just all around better. Also, if you wanted to join the one shot that's happening this Saturday, but you weren't in time, we're doing another one at the end of this month on June 25th. I know that's a Saturday, so hopefully most of you can make it, but you'll also want to sign up for that.
Perfect. Yeah, and just seconding what Justin was saying, we'd love to hear what kind of topics you would like us to discuss. Specifically, we do focus on DMing and how to be a better DM. So anything that's like, a lot of other, because we know that this is a fairly talked about topic, right? Just like how to run a D&D adventure. We would love to know if there's anything that you feel like is not discussed enough, right? Because there's so many areas you can talk about. So definitely reach out. But yeah, I'm thinking we just get into the main topic.
Sounds like a plan.
Perfect. So, like I mentioned at the top, we're just going to be talking about the classic old Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition D&D. There's a good chance that, if you're listening to this podcast, you found it, whether you bought it or found it online or anywhere else. And I'm glad you did. Here's the thing. The reason why we wanted to talk about it is it's kind of a big old thing. It's got a lot of sections. Some people probably really enjoy reading through it page by page. Other people, I mean, I got a little intimidated. I don't know. What about you, Justin?
Honestly, I am working my way through it page by page, and I feel like you're definitely right. My recommended approach to this would be to buy the Dungeon Masters Guild or borrow it or steal it, but hopefully you don't get caught. Uh, I'm not telling you to steal it. I'm just joking. But
No, he said it. He said it. Just kidding.
acquire the Dungeon Masters Guide and then come at it with lots of questions. That's how you're going to get the most out of it. Reading it cover to cover is really interesting, and more than anything, it just kind of tells you where to find certain things. You're not going to remember everything. If you come at it with a lot of questions, first of all, you're going to remember the answers to those questions. But second of all, you're going to enjoy it a lot more because you're going to find a lot more use to it rather than just reading it cover to cover, even though it's super interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. And here's the really great thing. For DMs, we have time to prepare ahead of time. Sometimes, not as much as we'd like. But regardless, as you're planning an adventure, you can turn to the Dungeon Master's Guide for any specific questions that you have, whether that's about character creation, about the rules, about environments, or you're just looking for inspiration. That you can turn there. And honestly, we thought that would be great to share some of our favorite sections. Justin, do you have a favorite section of the Dungeon Master's Guide?
As far as a favorite section, I don't think I have a favorite section. I have a couple that going through it have really stood out to me as being particularly useful and interesting. The first part, and maybe this is because right now I'm kind of in the process of building my own world, as it were. And if you ever do a one-shot with me, this is the world that you'll play in. But there's a whole section in the beginning of the Dungeon Master's Guide about really building out the world of your campaign. And for me, it helps kind of flesh out the ideas of settlements, castles, cities, geographically, but also kind of the political. I found learning about the political systems was really interesting. For example, a plutocracy. That was something I'd never heard of, but that's in the Dungeons Master's Guide. And it's essentially where a society is governed by the wealthy who kind of buy ruling seats on a council. It seems more like a trade commission than anything. But I found that was very interesting. And honestly, reading that section helped me formulate some of the governments in my particular world that I'm building. One in particular is it's called the Quenadine tradition, and it's kind of a it's a gerontocracy. So they venerate and value those who are oldest, and that's kind of how their government works. And it really helped me kind of flesh out a lot of that idea of this is a society that places the biggest emphasis on the people who have lived the longest and have the most wisdom and things like that. And I just found that very interesting and useful, as well as, going aside from that, I found that learning about the different planes and the gods and things, that was just plain interesting to me. And it really helped me understand a lot of the context around, the Feywild, the Shadowfell, elemental planes, upper and lower planes, and then, the outer realm. And if you don't know anything about that, then you definitely need to get the Dungeon Master's Guide and read about it.
Yeah, and what I love about that is maybe you're the kind of person like me who's like, hey, I don't need different planes in order to get the most out of an adventure. And I'm going to say that I and people who think like that are wrong. Just kidding. No, but honestly, I think that there's so much variety of adventures, so many different adventures that you can have if you just branch out a little bit. There's a reason why. So in past Dungeon Masters guides, they actually didn't put as much emphasis on world building. But in this one, they actually throw out like right at the start. Chapter 1, a world of your own. Chapter 2, creating a multiverse, and they kind of really go in depth into those different things. And the reason why is because half of an adventure is wonder, right? Just creating this sense of wonder. And so it's like, hey, one of the best ways to do that is just, have an adventure take place or at least a part of an adventure, take place in a different plane, or have, your enemies come from a specific place, and that kind of informs the story. So yeah, I think that's wonderful.
If I can add on that, you're totally right. And one example of this wonder is I like a group on YouTube called High Rollers. I think they're out of the UK, and they have a campaign called Erois. And if you're listening to this, spoiler alert, but there's one specific part in their campaign where they're fighting kind of this cosmic aberration, I guess you could say. And when the aberration dies, I don't remember fully, but the aberration, the only way to kill it was to do this specific spell or something, and it accidentally transported all of them across the universe to another planet. And in this world, or in this campaign, the planets functioned as different planes. And it was really
Oh.
interesting, and it did increase my sense of wonder that suddenly they're randomly on this plane of angels, essentially, but in this world, most of the planes have been conquered by this force. Anyways, so you'd think that they were in good hands, being on an angel planet, but instead they're in the heart of the enemy. And it's just like I said, it increased my sense of wonder because in 1 second they're on this island on the home planet, and then randomly, before they had ever space traveled, and this is kind of a blend of science fiction and fantasy. Anyways, it just, like you said, it increased my sense of wonder because instantly from 1 second to another, they were in one place to a completely unfamiliar place with different rules entirely for how reality worked. And I think that's a really cool way to, like you said, build your world and instill wonder in your players.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that actually kind of transitions perfectly into the section I want to talk about, which is rules. I do love how in that campaign you were talking about, and this is true of not just that campaign, but anytime like there is a different plane, different planes have totally different rules, right? Like you're gonna have to roll different checks depending on how everything works, and the great thing is that they have the rules right there in that creating multiverse section. But then also there's a full section in the guide that's just about rules. Rules are pretty, like, if you're just talking about rules, that kind of sounds boring. And it is if you're just, nerding out on just like, oh my goodness, but like, is that what kind of DC check is that? But instead, the great thing about the rules section is just that anything that you can come up with, they're going to have something being like, hey, this is how you tweak it, right? This is, if you've got this many players and this is their level, this is what you can expect as far as a monster, difficulty and everything else. Like, it just has everything that you could want, especially at the end of the book. It's got this Dungeon Master's Workshop, which just goes to town on telling you a bunch of different like variant rules, which I love because I'm a sucker for making things different, but also having rules backing that up, right? Yeah, I thought I should mention it because, like, as much as we get very excited about everything else, it's the rules that make D&D very possible, and so that's what I love about that.
I think you're completely right. And I think that section is important too because it kind of helps you make your own rules, or for example, it kind of teaches you how to tweak monsters or what to do with creating your own monsters or subclasses or races or classes, things like
Yep.
that. And I think that's the beauty of the Dungeons Master's Guide. As you said, you said that in previous issues or previous editions,
Yeah.
I guess, they didn't focus so much on world building. I really feel like with this one, they're trying to put you in the seat of world creator, story writer, kind of an idea, and really put you in the seat of, hey, this is your game. It's not our game, it's your game. So here's how to make it easier for you. which is actually kind of the point of this podcast too. This is kind of like a running Dungeons Master's guide, hopefully. Really just to make being a dungeon master easier and more fun and hopefully cheaper for everyone,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that this they did a really good job at making it kind of a one-stop shop for just about everything you need. Now, there's a caveat there,
Yeah.
and I'm going to throw this out for the rules section. This is such a good book for preparation. I would say that it's kind of a crappy book at, for in the middle of a session, it's like, oh my goodness, what do I want to do? It's like, nope, it's a big book, got a lot of pages, too late. Should have thought about that earlier. Just roll
Yeah.
with it for now.
Or you need like thousands of sticky notes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think you should find out the places that you are constantly referring to. Like, for example, I don't know if Justin and I are super huge fans of, random encounters or like tables for treasures or anything like that. Because we typically like to have a more personal decision about what's in different places. But the thing is, if you are the kind of person who, maybe you meet regularly enough and you're not trying to do some kind of epic, you're trying to make it more like, oh, it's more randomized, then like you could absolutely just put some sticky notes or some tabs for those different tables and you're set, right? That's one you can quickly reference. Otherwise, I would say that the rule of thumb is always, if it's going to slow down the story and kind of grind things to a halt, and it's not like crazy important, then I would say, just do a filler rule. You can always afterwards, make a note at the time, and then afterwards look up what the actual rule is, come back, and then in future sessions you'll get it right. But and of course the caveat is, if a player's life is ever on the line, you're gonna have to take the time and find out the rule. It's just, that's a given. But otherwise, I would say most other times, try and do your preparation beforehand. Maybe have a few tabs, but otherwise realize that once the session's going, you won't have as much flexibility to just refer to it, unless you're a much better person than I am.
I agree with you completely. And actually, in case there's anyone out there who's like, the Dungeon Master's Guide is terrible, it doesn't have everything. That's for sure. And one thing that specifically it doesn't have that I've had a devil of a time trying to figure out and create and find myself is rules, really good rules for when your player is cursed with lycanthropy. So if you out there have heard of something like that, definitely reach out to me. But I'm glad you also mentioned loot. And I know Garrett's going to laugh over at 225 games, but I am still on the fence about random encounters. Because I do like them on one hand, but I see what he was saying about like, anyways, that's another discussion for another day. But you mentioned loot, and actually loot is one of my favorite parts of the DM book. I remember when my older brother, got the Dungeon Master's Guide like 2 years before I ever got it, and he would catch me with the book, and I'd be looking through at all the different like magic items, because there's so many in there, and they're all just so different. More than anything, I think that alone makes the book worth it, because finding cool magic items is one of the best things as a player, and being able to match the right item with the right player is kind of hard, but it's also a fun challenge. And actually, 2 items that I found in the Dungeon Master's Guide that I think are particularly cool is Daerns Instant Fortress, which is kind of like this. It's like, it is what it says it is. It's like 30-foot tall, 20 by 20 by 20, I guess, or 20 by 20 by 30, like adamantine fortress that is like super durable and built, and it's pretty cool. But I also like another item called Bag of Tricks, which is like a little bag filled with like fuzz balls that you can pull out and throw, and then they turn into animals. That's kind of a cute one that, I think anyone could get behind. One particular item that is also in there, and it's not an item, it's more of an artifact, and it's a duo artifact, especially with Stranger Things coming out, that I think everyone would be interested in hearing about. The Hand and Eye of Vecna, are in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So if you want to build an entire campaign around those 2 items, they're there for you. And that's like an instant, you know, BBEG, you know. So those are some of my thoughts about loot.
Yeah, it's. I'll tell you, I've done the same thing. The thing that always gets me is just cloaks. Anytime there's a cloak, I'm like, oh yeah, because the artwork that they do for it is just killer. Yeah, just a random thing. But yeah, I love the loot and that they just got the treasure in there, and it's just very nicely put. And obviously, you know, I'm sure that everybody probably tries to create their own. You can, you know, that, and they have rules for that as well. But if you don't want to, they have so many options of just already made loot that's just wonderful to just pick and use. Justin, I was re-going through the different sections in the Dungeon Master Guide in preparation for this, and one section that I'll be honest, I haven't used that much, but I kind of wanted to shout it out because I think it's awesome that it exists. So you know how they have the appendices at the end, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I believe it's the last appendice. D, they have a Dungeon Master inspiration thing, which is just a list of reading for different kinds of things, right? Like they've got real world history and myth, and just like a selection of books. Like they literally have 2 books called, like one book called Castles, another one called Castle, and I'm like, okay, that those are essentially the same title, but they obviously felt they needed to put it, and they just have all these, and like they have some for writing, for example. And we've talked about the importance of writing, that it's like, hey, I know that a lot of people like to do it off the cuff, but if you have a pre-written, dialogue or paragraph introing you into a setting, that can make all the difference. And they just have a whole section of books there, and then even some books that are directly about GMing. Yeah, I'm just very impressed that they took the time for that, because I found that when I was doing a Dracula themed adventure, I drew a lot on what I knew from the actual book Dracula, and that's my advice. I'm like, hey, they put this section there, and obviously it's not all encompassing, but they have some really good source material that I think would be worth reading.
Shoot, you might have just filled up my Amazon wish list for Christmas.
I know it's a lot of books here, like a lot of freaking books, but they look great, honestly. Like they have one that's called The Map Makers, and I'm like, okay,
Oh, wow.
I've never wanted or to learn more about maps until I read that title, and then I was like, okay, apparently I need to learn about maps now.
So here's a fun prompt for you DMs out there. Go to the appendix and then pick a random title and make that the title of your campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just, and then they have a bunch of like Gary Gygax's like books like written by him as like source material. I'm like, oh, classic. And they even have one about the history
That's
of
awesome.
gaming. Oh, that's awesome. But anyway, yeah, I just found that and I had to share it because I'm just a real sucker for lists of books. Like I'll never.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, but like I'll never just go to Barnes and Noble or some other bookstore, find a book I like, and then just buy it. I've always got to look
Right.
online, and it's like top whatever lists. It's like top fiction, top fantasy, top. And so like having a list built in, I'm like, well, that's great.
Yeah. And maybe one thing we can do in the future is give kind of, me and you can take one of the books each and then read it and then give like a Cliff Notes version episode of it to the listener and see if that's what they like. But
Great idea.
yeah. Anyways, any final closing thoughts?
Honestly, it's worth having this ready. Like I would say that no matter in what format you get it, just having the ability to go through it and read sections of it and refresh or learn for the first time about different things, it's really going to add a lot of fresh air, so to speak, to your to your campaign, and it's just going to be better overall.
Agreed. I would also add, if you're a player only, you don't need this. If you are only doing dungeon mastering as kind of a one and done thing, you don't need this. If you're planning on making it a hobby and you really want to excel and kind of build your skills, then this is essential. But thank you, listener, for joining us. Thanks for coming on our adventure. Make sure you stay tuned afterward to hear any announcements we have. Also, sign up for that one shot. We'd love to have you. And if you have any comments, questions, remember to reach out to us. But we'll be back next week for another great episode. Thanks for coming to the tavern with us. And until next time, let's roll initiative. Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action,
Shoot one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
drama,
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
and stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.